of the city get around. So that's why it's been so important. So one thing that we wanted to do was improve travel times and safety in the east-west corridor. And so we've put up money, the city did, then the state put up more money, and now the feds will be putting up money. So we're going to be having a lot of investment here to improve the bus services. So that's going to include transit signal priority, more bus lanes, some safety improvements and features along the corridors. So it's extremely exciting for one of the most important corridors, both the blue and the orange lines, east and west. So very exciting, and so exciting that Pete Buttigieg, U.S. DOT Secretary, came to Baltimore like a week or two ago to talk about it. Next slide. All right, we also have North Avenue Rising, which is 7 miles of dedicated bus lanes on North Avenue, which is one of, if not the most important, again, east-west corridors for bus service in Baltimore. So we're having enhanced bus stop, streetscaping, bike facilities, and traffic calming, which still needs to be finished and improved upon, roadway renovations, and some rail improvements. So that is a big project that's not quite wrapped up, but getting closer. Another partnership with MTA. So excited about the continuation and completion of that. So next slide. So here kind of shows the length of the project, especially the crosswalks, the lighting, planting signals. So this was another large project with a lot of investment in North Avenue. Next slide. And also recently we did the Lake to Lake grant. Somebody took an amazing photo at just the right time of day to add pedestrian safety improvements between the two lakes, up to Lake Montebello. So pretty cool project with NACTO, pretty cool engagement in concert with Bike More and others to get engagement. So pretty excited about this. I think it's super cool. I'm really happy that we were able to work together and make some of these pedestrian and bike improvements. Next slide. So looking ahead, we're working with MTA on their fast forward dedicated bus lane quick build projects. So that'll be some either new bus lanes, but also some improvements to current bus lanes, some pilot corridors that we're going to be trying out in 2022. And we're going to be advancing some more permanent corridors. So again, MTA's partnership is key to our success, both of our successes, and we want to continue that. So lots of love to MTA. And next slide. This is exciting. I don't know. I'm sure that, again, the transit choices folks have also heard. The Transit Safety Investment Act passes. As you know, DOT in the city has been pushing for this for over 2 years for state of good repair replacements. And this is great that there's going to be some real funding to keep MTA moving, keep MTA making the repairs that it needs to do to keep its systems up and running. So this is super exciting. This is huge news. Just having the money to do the work that they need to do will be so big for all the riders of transit services. Next slide. Also, this isn't quite a transit safety, but I would be remiss if we did not talk about the other big thing going on, which is the speed cameras on 83. So we have enabling legislation that has allowed DOT to put up 2 active speed cameras on 83 that give tickets. There's going to be so there will be 2 active at any one time. This is a safety program. So this is speeding on 83 and safety on 83 is an extreme issue. 83 is not built for the modern car or the modern roadway. It really never was. And so there's many accidents and many of them are due to speed on 83. So we are definitely looking to make 83 safer, slow people down. So we are going to be putting up 6 cameras that will have data, and we'll have sentries on each one telling people, hey, do not drive. They'll say, well, this is the speed you're going. So people are going to know what they're going to be speed they're doing. So this is not a gotcha. This is I'm telling you to slow down. So my hope is people will see the signs and slow down, but we do not know. So so there will be cameras. So at any one time, 2 of the 6 cameras will be active. They will be announced beforehand, clearly in the media. And so we will then have 2 cameras going at each time. This is a very large undertaking that we've been working very hard on. We're looking to start sometime early in the new year, probably February. There's going to be a 3-month warning period. So 3 full months. So motorists will know about what's going on. This is not so that everybody's going to know that there's speed cameras on 83 and you have to slow down. And if they're mad about that, they're mad about that, but then they slow down and they save lives. That's a good thing. One other key thing to mention is that the revenue will only go towards, running of the program, as well as safety improvements on 83, or general improvements as well on 83. So that is where this will all go. I think that might be the last slide. Next slide. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess that's the presentation. So I kick it back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Steve, for your both interesting and relevant presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we are so grateful for your hard work and efforts on behalf of Baltimore City DOT. And again, we appreciate your time. At this juncture, I'd like to open the floor to questions, comments. You may either put them in the chat, or you may raise your hand. If we could possibly take the presentation off the screen, there we go, that's great. So Jimmy Rouse, I believe that you had a question for Director Sharkey.
Yeah, I have a question that somebody else wrote in that can't be at the meeting. So I think it's a very good question. I'd like to read it. With the passage of the new infrastructure bill and its funding sources to remove expressways like the Highway to Nowhere and I-83, how is the department being proactive to take advantage and not fall behind other cities?
Yeah, so great question. So this is going to be, we're looking at possibly getting, again, or fighting for study money on studying how to remove the Highway to Nowhere. So our focus as a department and as the mayor's administration is the Highway to Nowhere. So that is our focus. We're going to be working, engaging consultant firms to work to help us to get any of those grants or federal funds towards the study money at the start. So yes, we definitely want to do that. That is the goal. And our priority will be Highway to Nowhere.
Robbie, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation, and to hear you advocating for complete streets and the circulator and connecting the circulator and the harbor connector. These are all music to our ears, things we've been advocating for years. So I really appreciate the direction you're taking the department in. And I know that a lot of the participants in Transit Choices feel the same way. So you have our full support. Whatever we can do to help you, we're happy to do. One of the things that's arisen in our discussions is the idea of land use as being essential to particularly transit-oriented development, being essential to creating a vibrant transit network by locating residents and jobs along the various stops, both of light rail, metro, and bus routes. So what is your attitude towards the importance of land use planning in creating greater equity in our transit system?
Well, there's definitely, I guess there's kind of two questions there. So first one, I'll just talk about TOD specifically, then I'll talk about land use in general. So I'm definitely a big fan of TODs. I think there's a lot of TOD opportunities in the city that have not been tapped, especially around the Mark and some of the other train lines. I was driving, this is 2 years ago, out in Laurel, in the middle of nowhere, Laurel, and there's I guess a Mark station there. And then I see this humongous new apartment complex with parking and everything right next to the Mark there. And, you know, just kind of showed how could be many of those similar opportunities for our locations here in the city on our rail lines. So I'm in favor of it. I know that part of the Penn Station redevelopment, which is huge. We've been supportive of the TOD designation there. I think that's going to be the biggest one in a long time. And we're, of course, supportive as the developers come through. If they have good plans to be supportive of other locations moving forwards as well. In terms of land use, I mean, that's definitely important. The more density you can get, the more you can have a transit network in a city that thrives. I really like what has happened in the downtown area. The number of new apartment complexes. I mean, I don't know if anybody lived in downtown 20 years ago. I'm trying to picture where an apartment complex was, but the tax credits and everything to support that. The office conversions has been amazing and reinvigorated downtown in a lot of ways. So super cool. So yeah, I definitely am supportive of looking at new ways to make, you know, to improve transit and make the city more dense, of course. But again, no, I'm not particularly going to support any particular bill at any particular time, just as a rejoinder there. So
Thank you.
Joseph?
Yes, thank you. Very good to hear about the many initiatives you have on your plate. But I was interested in your reference to reconfiguring opportunities with institutional shuttle services. Could you say a little bit about what that will entail?
well, I want to say, yes, I can, but a lot of times the institutional shuttle services, we have to work with them. So we're going to be working, we've, you know, kind of talked about working with them, and we're going to continue talking and working with them. So anything they do has to be something we both agree on. So I can't say what we will or won't do. So sometimes the particular institutions have their shuttle services and they do, you know, they do what they want to do. And we'll work with them to improve their services. But if there is some overlap, possibly with the circulator, we'd love to work with them. But again, I can't, you know, they have their own things, we have our own things. We'd love to work together. And if we can come together, that'll be great. And we're going to continue to try to come together on things.
Steve, I'm here on the call. Can I speak just?
Yes.
Hi. So a big part of that and us working with the institutional shuttle is around curb space management. A lot of the shuttles and a lot of the travel routes are very similar to the circulator along with the Baltimore Link and things of that sort. So as part of this TDP and part of the curb space management group that we have within DOT is working with the shuttle services to figure out how and what we can do around their stops and where they are stopping in the city to better manage the curb space areas, because often when there are multiple shuttle services along with our regular public transit stopping in the same place, it's causing backups in and around those areas. So that's a big part of how we are working and connecting with the various university shuttles.
Thank you.
Anna?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I really enjoyed the presentation. I'm really excited about all this complete street stuff. I have a question about transit signal priorities. You talked about having transit signal priority on this east-west route, and my understanding is that there is some on some bus routes. I believe Lock Raven Boulevard. Why we have never done this for the light rail. And this has always been one of my, I mean, it's been 30 years now, and we still don't have transit signal priority on Howard Street for the light rail. And I've never been able to get an answer as to why that can't happen.
I'm not sure that there's absolutely no transit signal priority there, but I think that there needs to be some, well, I don't want to speak for MTA. We've had some discussions on improving that. But I don't want to speak out of turn, especially because I know I've talked to Holly about it, but it was about a year ago, so I can't remember the exact pieces of the conversation. So I'll have to get with Holly and come talk back to you about it.
Okay, I asked her about it at a meeting, and she also said she would get back to me, and I haven't heard from her either. So,
well, we will get back to you.
okay, thank you.
Director Sharkey, I'm looking, we have some questions and comments in the chat. Not sure if you'll be able to see it, but this question comes from Sue. When will Charm City circulator buses be ADA compliant with stop announcements?
Monica?
Sure.
Who's-
Our current buses do have automatic vehicle announcement system. There has been some challenges with the vendor that for our AVA systems that we have been working through. I actually just had a meeting with the operations team just yesterday to discuss these announcement systems. And as I understood, based on just the conversation yesterday, they were all of the buses that were on the road. The automatic vehicle announcement systems were working and functioning properly at this time. The issue, quite honestly, is sometimes because of the GPS positioning system, sometimes the AVAs are just not consistent. So the rule is for the AVAs is they need to announce the stops. And if there's an issue with the system, the bus drivers are also supposed to verbally announce the system. And that has been a push for me to make sure that our driver staff is made aware of that. And of course, working with the bus, our vendor for our announcement systems to make sure that is continuously up and running.
Thanks for working on this and trying to improve it, Monica.
Thank you, Monica. We also have another question in the chat, which is the 50 million RISE money should be leveraged, bear with me 1 second, should be leveraged to raise the entire corridor. Sorry, my computer is, including land use and economic development. Is there an effort to rope other departments in? And
I mean,
that,
our focus has been that so far, and once we get through the planning phase, we could certainly look at that. But we're just trying to do the 6 major big things we're doing right now. So there is some work going on North Avenue to improve North Avenue. So after North Avenue Rising, so I envision that especially on the west side, some of those things could be done as well for this.
wonderful. And then a second part of that chat is at Penn Station, the city must insist on having circulator and MTA integrated into an intermodal station, not just sitting along the curb assist.
I don't.
Any comments on that?
I was confused by that question.
That question came from Klaus. Klaus, are you still with us?
Yeah, the designs that the team shows currently leaves the buses on the curb, at the curb on Charles Street and on St. Paul Street, just like today. And there is no integrated intermodal station because all the land is used for commercial activity. So I imagine that a really integrated intermodal station should be more like what we have in Washington, DC, and that also the intercity buses are integrated as well. So I think it would take a push from the city and from MTA to make sure that they're not just observers on this design, but that they become actual players.
Got it. Okay, I thought you were talking about Pennsylvania Avenue, and I was so confused as to why the circulator was on Pennsylvania Ave, but it's Penn Station redevelopment. Okay, so thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've been working with some of the teams to try to add pieces. I know there is limited space, but we certainly, those are comments are well taken. So we'll see if we can look at the plans.
Thank you. We have time for one more question before we move to our next presentation, and that comes from Sue.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm in the office here. Let me step out. Regarding the stop announcements and ADA compliance on the Charm City Circulator, they're definitely not compliant. I ride it almost every day with the stop announcements. And also for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, such as myself, there's no way, you don't know what, if the driver is going to say something, you wouldn't know. And also the stop announcements there's no, like, it'll just say stop requested, but I want more people who are deaf or hard of hearing to move back to the city. Everybody have moved out because of lack of services. So,
Okay. So we're talking about the actual signs inside the buses. So that,
yeah.
Okay.
Right. Where you would normally see stop announcements on, like MTA has them, but even MTA isn't totally compliant. Some of their newer buses are still non-compliant.
Okay. Yeah, that is, that piece is a growth area for us. But Sue, do me a favor, please. I put my email address in the chat. Please reach out to me directly and we can talk about this offline.
Thank you.
We will now move to our next presentation, and I am delighted to introduce Meg Young, who is the Shared Mobility Coordinator with Baltimore City Department of Transportation. Good morning, Meg.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here and follow up on the director's presentation. From a staff perspective, I have to say working under Director Sharkey has been a real breath of fresh air when he talks about our priorities, like complete streets, like being more equitable in our work. He really means it. So I'm going to take us from that overview to one of our newest and smallest vehicles out on the road, dockless vehicles, and how we're using the model that we developed over the past few years to look at other emerging mobility we expect to see in Baltimore City. So before I get really into that, really quickly, dockless vehicles, what do I mean? I mean the e-scooters and e-bikes that are available for rent from the public right-of-way. These are the Lime, the Link, the Spin scooters, and e-bikes. At DOT, we manage the permits, and then those companies manage the operations. And it's really been a fascinating job for me to be involved in this program, because it's really on the intersection of dealing with new technology and trying to meet those goals of equity and integrating an absolutely new vehicle type onto our city streets, which have been served a lot of purposes over the years in Baltimore. From cars, trucks, light rails, everything that y'all advocate for. So trying to fit these into the existing roadway. So for my presentation today, I'm going to go over a couple of things, our dockless goals and how that fits into the overall DOT vision, and that's to improve transportation equity and to really support complete streets and increase the active transportation mode. I saw the giggle at the picture on the screen, when I talk about the goals, we're trying to set good habits.
Love it.
Yep. So I'll walk you through a little bit of the process we've developed in working through these goals, which is based on really trying to be transparent in our management and the obstacles we're facing and how we can approach those, and using data-driven decisions to make kind of incremental changes in the program. And then I'll share some of the latest developments with both the permit program, how we're supporting it, and some of these emerging modes that we are anticipating and trying to gear ourselves up for in Baltimore City. So dockless vehicles, a brief history. When they first hit the streets in August 2018, they really launched overnight. These were run by private companies, and at the beginning it was like scoot fast and break things, right? They came in overnight. There were vehicles in the right of way that were not permitted, and we really had to quickly assemble a pilot to deal with things like what's in this picture. This guy is riding 7 vehicles at once, and we didn't know this was happening. We wouldn't know why. He's charging the vehicles, it turns out. So there was so much we had to learn about the program during this pilot period. During the pilot, we met every 2 weeks in a public open committee, the Dockless Vehicle Committee, to talk through all of these things. Durrett, who I think is on this call, took this picture. Again, we didn't even know what's happening in every single part of Baltimore, because when these launched, it was drastically different than the Baltimore bike share, which was solely downtown and was not really serving the neighborhoods. When scooters launched, we could immediately have them in the neighborhoods that need them most and really all over the city. So we needed to have these open meetings in order to, hear what was happening all over the city. After our pilot, we submitted a pretty lengthy evaluation to City Council, and they decided to pass an ordinance that defined the vehicle. Like I said, the newest vehicle on the roadway. We had to actually get this into vehicle code, and also established a permit to oversee this program. We issued the first permits in August in 2019. Then of course, 2020 happened. We had to be flexible. The state of emergency in Maryland meant we had to extend the permits. And that's important because we set up this permit program with annual rules and regulations because, again, we know that we don't know everything about these vehicles and about the program. And so it's really important to have flexibility to be able to revise rules and regulations on an annual basis. So then when we had this extension, we really had to be flexible and figure out how we can make some improvements, even if we can't officially change the rules and regulations. When the state of emergency, or that portion of the state of emergency, was lifted earlier this year, we were then able to reissue new permits in 2021 with the revised rules and regulations that kind of up standards for equity, up standards for vehicle requirements, for rider education, everything that we'd been, people had been asking for. We finally had the chance to implement that with the new 2021 permits. And I'll get more into some of that. The rules and regulations that we have the opportunity to update on an annual basis. I won't read this all to you, but they cover a lot of things. It's 12 or 14 pages of rules and regulations that these companies do have to abide by. And they cover everything from the number of vehicles, education of riders, the number of events they have to go out and do, the data that we get. I'll say they're pretty thorough. I wrote them though, so I'm a little biased. I think that they go into detail on a lot of things. And it is something that we check in on the 15th and the 30th of every month with the companies to see, are they following, each and every line of their permit. At the end of the presentation, when we have time for questions, if you want to know about any of these categories, I think I have it all memorized. So it'll be a good quiz for me. If you want to know the specific rule or regulation that the companies have to follow, they are also publicly posted on our website. So the companies have to follow all of these rules and regulations. And, from the DOT perspective, we are trying to basically push them towards being, serving the Baltimore community a little better. If it's improving the equity standards, if it's improving the vehicle standards, they are private businesses, but we're the ones who are pushing them to be more responsible and serve the needs of Baltimore. So that's where our role comes in. At the same time, at DOT, we do support the program. So these companies pay an annual permit fee to operate. That's one misconception I hear is like, you know, these companies are just operating and making money in Baltimore for free, or that we're paying for the service. But actually they pay an annual permit fee, which this year was $42,000, in addition to a 10 cents per ride tax. So that goes into the city's general fund and is largely reallocated to the program for program support. That includes consultant help and data storage for all of the great data we get from the trips. It includes infrastructure improvements like bike facility repairs and building out designated parking spots. And it includes community engagement in terms of some of our PSAs and safety events about safely riding dockless vehicles. So going through this process, we've learned a lot. And this is something that I'm pausing here because I want you to have this in mind as we gear up towards other emerging modes we might see. These are the lessons that I think we really need to carry forwards, right? So the initial pilot was absolutely essential because it was a focused period where, again, we were having meetings at least every 2 weeks, and I was dedicating almost all of my time to this pilot. And with a new mode, having that time period to say, like, do we want this on our streets or not, was really essential. It gave us some more flexibility, and we were allowed to do it for up to a year under city code. And so it's something that I think we really need to take advantage of if there's something else that, you know, we didn't even see coming and appears on our streets. The quantitative and qualitative data are really needed to shape our regulations and to update them. So our regulations actually dictate, you know, the type of data we get from the companies about the trips, as well as qualitative data that they have to submit about events they're doing. And it's helping us to really relook at it intentionally and use it to update our rules and regulations. And then the last thing is just that working with a tech company, working with companies like Spin or Lime, requires some flexibility, because sometimes, you know, I'm not a computer programmer, I work in transportation. And so it requires flexibility to learn about the different systems they're using, you know, being able to talk to other cities who are experiencing the same thing. And then in 2020, that was just amplified because, you know, we didn't have direct to their operations, and the way people are using the roadway, you know, drastically changed. So with this backdrop, the latest developments with the program, we have 3 permit holders that we issued permits to in July. That's Lime, Link, and Spin. Some people, you know, lump all the scooters together, but they are a little, they do offer each somewhat different services. So Lime has both the e-scooters and e-bikes. Link has new proprietary e-scooters. They're kind of the newest, latest and greatest scooters out on the market. They have the biggest wheels, the best shocks, etc. And then Spin has e-scooters, and they're piloting in Baltimore some sidewalk riding detection and other things that we think are going to help people really share the road with scooters. They're all required to offer low income plans. They're all required to offer discounts for rides that take place in our equity zones. And then Lime and Link are both now approved to launch adaptive vehicles in 2022. So those are vehicles that are, again, new to the roadway, but different than a typical e-scooter. Either, you know, they have some motorized tricycles for people who don't have balance for, you know, operating e-scooter. They actually have a 2-seater tricycle. So somebody who has mobility needs or maybe has a caretaker with them would be able to take it out in a park. So those would all be 24-hour rentals that we are working with the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities to kind of link people up who have those special needs and maybe want to, you know, experience a nice day in a park on a different vehicle, be able to take out an adaptive vehicle for a day. On the DOT side of things, again, we reinvest the permit fees into the program. And so the latest with our program support, if we look here, you know, young women wearing masks in 2020 and parking in a parking corral. How do we support them to find vehicles, to be able to easily rent vehicles, and throughout their trip and at the end of the trip, you know, follow the rules of the road and reduce the impact on other modes. So the top line items, probably our parking corral program has really expanded in the past year. We have about 60 of these to date. And that's what these ladies are renting the vehicles from. It's a painted box, really minimal installation, but they appear in the app so people know where these designated parking spots are. And they're meant to really kind of act like a sponge and concentrate vehicles in the designated area so that they don't end up cluttering a sidewalk, blocking the path for somebody who's walking. So we've installed about 60 to date across the city. Our priority locations were, you know, places to reduce vandalism. So that's like putting a designated parking spot 100 meters from the harbor is going to mean that the scooter is a little bit further and we don't end up with vehicles in the harbor if you can't park it right up against the water. We've been trying to cover popular trip destinations, and then I'm sure of interest to this group, the connection to transit. So working with MDOT MTA, we are putting in parking corrals at all rail stations. We have probably about 10 of them so far. We're also covering the North Avenue Rising corridor with both scooter and bike parking. And then we are launching a station survey to report issues or request vehicles from rail stations. So that's going to appear soon. It'll be a new sign next to the parking sign that people can email us or scan a QR to be taken to that survey and let us know if there are issues with, you know, scooters blocking the bus stop at that station, or that they get off the metro and they want to have a scooter there. They would be able to make that request. And then the other thing that's been big this year is trying to increase our event support with this program. So that's everything from DOT presenting to Downtown Partnership, or we worked with Johns Hopkins, who was on the call to talk about you know, issues on their campus. We also are taking community requests for vehicles or, you know, a sign up table, anything they want at events. And then for large events, we can now do temporary parking areas. So for a large event, like at the convention center, we can pop up a quick parking area so that, again, they don't end up blocking the sidewalk and they end up concentrated in one place. And then for the largest events, the operators are now required to do a sweep before, during, and after events to make sure the vehicles end up parked in an orderly fashion. Ooh, so this has been a mouthful, but with all of this and all of the work we've been doing, you're probably like, if we go back to the goals and the nun wearing the habit and the good habits we're trying to set, how are we doing with reaching it? I think we're doing pretty well. I'm gonna flash back and forth here because on the screen, these are streets with more than 3 trips per day. And in Baltimore, geography plays a huge role in equity. You know, we have huge arterials that divide neighborhoods. We have drastically different needs from neighborhood to neighborhood. And this was in 2019, what the ridership map looked like. You know, downtown is really popping here. We see the north-south corridor, of course. This is before we had all of our equity requirements. This is before we required, you know, vehicles for rent in all parts of the city. This is before we had our low income plans. We flip to now, there's a huge difference in the map. I'll go back. The amount of Baltimore neighborhoods that can now take advantage of this program, and clearly do, because this is where rides are happening, has changed drastically. We see a huge amount of ridership up along the metro line. We see it all the way down in Cherry Hill, which is an equity zone. And when people get off the light rail now, they can find a vehicle to get up the literal hill in Cherry Hill. So through these two, these are our two main tactics here, making the vehicles available physically, and then actually providing alternate plans to meet people's needs. So through that, we did, again, learn some lessons. We're the ones that have to push the equity. The actual vehicles need to be paired with those plans. Those two tactics really complement each other. And then there can be iterations, right? If we find out something isn't working with this permit system, we'd have the opportunity to kind of build and change our programs as we learn how it's impacting or how it's working or how it's not. Right now, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is doing a consultation grant with us and researching really the best tactics in those equity zones to increase ridership. So yeah, I'll go back. I like to see the difference that 2 years and just a few regulations can make for how people can get around different neighborhoods. Our other big goal, and which the director, again, we're just gonna hammer into y'all, complete streets, complete streets, complete streets. This can play a huge role in it because having people out on a smaller vehicle and just being visible makes people more aware, right? That they're gonna be seeing more and more people walking or on a bike or on a scooter or on whatever vehicle is next. And so our tactics here are growing ridership and then again, reinvesting those permit fees for some quick fixes that are gonna support our complete streets goals. Since the 2021 permit, we've averaged 194,000 trips per month, which is a lot. Like people who think there's just joy rides happening on the scooters are the e-bikes. I'm sorry, they're incorrect. We see in the fall, it was 10,000 trips a day. That's out of a little bit less than 3,000 vehicles out there and over 55,000 people signed up actively using the system each month. And then we reinvest these fees, the fees into bike facilities. So this was a case study from a few years ago, but we can look at the ridership data and support the fact that once we put in safer facilities, people shifted their patterns. In this case, we are trying to get ridership off of Key Highway, which is not a safe place to be on a small vehicle, and get people onto a new facility on Covington Street as an alternative. So we can both see that in the data and then use permit fees for when we have a bike project and it just needs, maybe a couple extra things at an intersection to make it safer, or we need some repairs. We can pretty easily tap these funds and support complete streets through the dockless permit fees. I'm thinking I'm probably a little low on time. If the presentation is sent out, I'm sure you'll be able to look at this. During COVID-19, when we needed to be really flexible, we saw huge changes in ridership. What this map will show you, if you go back and look at it, is the transit lines were one of the only places in the city where ridership actually increased at the beginning of 2020. And again, that's really underscores the importance of our coordination and our work with MTA on this program and really everything that we do at DOT. So lastly, oh man, I had to pull in here and everything. We're really low on time though. The latest, I would say, is like how we're going to apply this model of being flexible, of setting up permits to get the right data and make, push, if it's a private company, towards being responsible towards the Baltimore community, are things that we're going to have to apply to some of these other emerging modes. We're seeing huge shifts in e-bikes and moped scooters, rideshare, and then the curbside management that Monica alluded to that we're really looking at Baltimore City. It's turning into a tech thing. We're learning there's new APIs coming out, which is an application program interface. It's a data stream. So a lot of these things are turning into tech, and it's something that we're going to be, I think, going to have to shift our mindset about. And so having the opportunity of going through this experience with scooters and learning how essential, like requiring the right type of data, analyzing the data, and using it to make decisions is going to be really applicable as these other modes kind of shift. And then the latest and greatest from the state is that personal delivery devices. This is going to be, I think, the newest thing that we're going to see soon. These are delivery robots, personal delivery devices. It means delivery robots. And so the state this year approved a pilot, and then at our request ended up carving out a big space for municipalities to set regulations. Because we said, again, based on our experience with scooters, we know we need to really dictate a lot to these companies. So we were really happy that they took our advice there, our input there, and carved out that space. So you can go tell me what your top concerns are, because when there's delivery robots, I'm concerned about what our regulations are going to be, and we want to be poised to, you know, really set up a smart pilot and get what we need to make decisions from the outset. So this is my last slide, and I can just leave it here if we have time for any questions. But yeah, what I really want to stress is that we're trying to position ourselves for what comes down the road, literally down the road, pun intended, and trying to make smart decisions and going back again and again to those, you know, departmental goals of complete streets, integrating things safely, and when we have something new, thinking about equity and the needs of all Baltimore City will continue to be important to us. So.
Thank you very much, Meg, for your excellent presentation. May we go back to full screen?
Mm-hmm.
Great. You know, I want to say on behalf of Transit Choices, you know, how much we acknowledge and appreciate all of the hard work that you have done to really, you know, this program, when we think about when BikeShare started to where we are today, the progress has just been tremendous. So we are very, very fortunate to have you kind of leading the charge under the direction of, you know, Director Sharkey, but it's really excellent and certainly is music to our ears in terms of the equity piece, right? It just making sure that everyone in the city has access to multimodal forms of transportation. So we would now like to open the floor to questions or comments. I do see that there are some comments in the chat. Yolanda, are you still with us?
I am.
Would you like to share your comment in the chat?
Yes, I'm happy to share it. Yeah, I was curious about for developer mitigation, whether or not there are opportunities for those funds to go into the Complete Streets Network, particularly for the dedicated lanes for bikes and scooters. And
Yeah.
Meg indicated they are.
Yeah, Matt, I think, has more direct experience with this. Matt, if you want to speak up, they definitely can be. It depends on the specific development, but there are a couple projects right now that you know, the developers are contributing to our Greenway Trail network. Matt, do you want to share about some of those projects you have going on?
Sure, and just speaking specifically to the development mitigation fees, oftentimes it depends on the actual location, and it can be used for a lot of different types of, you know, projects. You know, it could be improving greenery, you know, sidewalks and bike facilities. So really is an assessment of kind of the needs of the development and how those funds are directed. But DOT has input on how those funds can be used for those different types of projects.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yolanda. Nice to see you.
Do we have any other questions or comments for Meg? Well, Meg, we would appreciate your sending us your presentation that we can share with the Full Transit Choices Coalition. We will also share with both you and Director Sharkey the questions and comments in the chat if you would like to follow up. With that said, I'd like to thank each and every one of you who joined us this morning and who continue to support our advocacy work in the public transit arena. A special note of thanks to our guest presenters, Director Steve Sharkey and Meg Young. And we wish you and yours a very happy holiday season. It's hard to believe it's only in, a few weeks that we will be closing out 2021. But we do look forward to our continued partnership and collaboration with Baltimore City Department of Transportation. With that said, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.